Well, the Dockside is about to erupt in support for their home team now. Bristol about to take on Cambridge in the second of the women's semi-finals. To guide us through it all, Greg and Nick.
And it is interesting to hear everybody talking about how conditions are changing. It's still a tailwind, Greg, but it's beginning to buffet around a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we heard it from Olivia there. She said you need to keep your eyes in the boat, and I think really it's a case of controlling the controllables in these conditions. There's a lot going on, particularly for the Bristol crew, the home crowd cheering them on, but don't worry about that, just control what you can control. The water might be a bit bumpy, but again, if you can handle it well, you get the result.
You're getting a decent blow dry if you're on top of that big wheel at the moment. It's not bad down here. Harbour side, what a view, what a beautiful part of the country. There they are.
That's right, quite an adventure up there, and down here at water level we can see the flags fluttering, and it's all right behind the crew, so it's only helpful, so they'll appreciate that alongside the short format we're doing today.
So here we go for the right to play Oxford in the women's final. It's Bristol with the yellow oars, the yellow bibs, against Cambridge in the pink.
Attention. Go!
See those golden blades buried in the water for the Bristol crew, and they've stayed connected, they've stayed long, and they've brought it out now pretty much stroke for stroke right off the start here.
Cambridge, we know, have rigged the boat as hard as it'll go. They've picked a heavy gear to try to maximise the power over a shorter distance, and they've got that going from a fairly early stage.
Yeah, Cambridge got away well, but their strokes, they're still pretty much side by side. It could now be about the home crowd and whether this crew from Bristol can dig deep now, because now they really need it. Cambridge, I think, have a few feet lead at this stage of the race. There's still plenty more to go.
The two boats converging on each other as we have a look at the Cambridge stroke. Andrea de Bruin, long journey back from a serious car crash for her on the road to a training camp a couple of years ago. But now she is in the boat trying to take them home.
See, she is trying to take them home, but they're staying clean, they're staying above these waves, and we're coming in so close to the line.
It's going to be Bristol, and Bristol will be in the final. They have beaten Cambridge in the semi-finals, and the locals here, lining the quayside, have a double bonus in the final two races of the day. The men's final will feature Bristol, and the women's final will feature Bristol.
Which is fantastic. You saw them come back through the middle of the race. The Cambridge crew with that tough gearing paid for it later in the race. The muscles must have been burning, the lactate would have been high, but the Bristol crew, they managed to stay clean, they managed to stay in their own boat, focused on what they were doing, and came through at the end.
Home waters, Craig. Home advantage. Home success.
Well, Heather, the power of technique over the power of the heart, and there was all about heart for Bristol there, wasn't it? Not a great start. They had to fight for that one.
Yeah, definitely. I was surprised. They looked a little lethargic out of the start there. I don't know if they just kind of weren't quite with heads in the game, or they just made it slightly harder for themselves. I'm not sure, but it took them a good 10 or 15 strokes to actually get going, really, to get into the race. And actually, they drew back really well through the middle there, and it was a really kind of a dominant finish by Bristol. But it'll be interesting to see in the final whether they kind of sharpen up their first 10 strokes.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to, because Oxford have been absolutely brilliant from the very start here. But, I mean, what's the cause of that? Do they have just a tactic? Do they go, we're going to set off with this stroke rate, or are they just not quite pulling right? Is there no flow? What's happening?
I'm not too sure what they did differently there to the heats race, but normally in a start in an 8, you start off with kind of a half slide stroke, then a quarter slide. So you're really short and sharp, and then you lengthen out as you kind of get 8, 10, 12 strokes into the race. And they just seem to take a really long, slow stroke. And I'm not sure why that was. If that was tactical or slightly by mistake, who knows?